Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today's video is going to be my February wrap-up / reading stats. So in the month of February, I actually managed to finish 11 books, and I DNF'd 2 books. I participated in 2 readathons, or attempted to participate in 2 readathons. I did not complete either readathon, but I did my best. I'll talk about this more when I'm going over my book reviews. Sorry, I have a hair in my face. As far as genres go, I did read 3 fantasy books, 2 romance books, 2 nonfiction books, 1 literary fiction book, 1 sci-fi book, 1 historical fiction, and 1 horror book. For author gender, I read from 7 female and 4 male authors. I read 1 author of color and 10 white authors. And I read from 9 authors from the US. 1 was born in China but identifies as American, so I kept her in that as well. And 1 author from England and 1 author from Scotland. And then I read 10 books using the audiobook, 1 book physically, and 2 books using an ebook. And you'll notice that that's more than 11, but I did a combination for several of those as well. For demographics this month, I read 9 adult books and 2 young adult books. I did not read any works that were translated. I did not read any books that had queer rep in them, and I did read 2 books set in Caldwell, New York, 1 book set in California, 2 books set in Washington, D.C., 1 book set in Arkansas, 1 book set in Inverfell, 1 book set in Colorado, 1 book set in Lincolnshire, England, 1 book set in London, 1 book set in Winterfell, and 2 books that were cross-country in the US. So I didn't list individual places because they were primarily road trip books, which I think is interesting. That also adds up to more than 11, but some books had multiple settings. And Inverfell and Winterfell, is that what they were called? Yeah, both of those are fantasy worlds, just so you know. For star ratings, I did not read any 1-star books. I had 1 2-star book, 1 2.5-star book, 1 3-star book, 5 3.5-star books, 2 4-star books, and 1 5-star book for an average rating of 3.5. Again, I'm not going to go through these in the order in which I enjoyed them. I'm just going to go through them in the order in which I read them. I hope that doesn't bother you too much, but that will help me talk about the readathons that I participated in because I read in an order for that. So, without further ado, the first book that I finished this month was Lover Enshrined by J.R. Ward, which is the 6th book, I believe, in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. Spoilers, I did read one other thing in the series this month, but I am deciding to DNF this series at this point. It's just really not hitting for me. It's a vampire romance series, and you follow this group of brothers. They're not actual brothers, but they're called the Brotherhood, and they are supposed to be the vampire warriors of this world. And they are fighting a good versus evil battle against these creatures called Lessers, which are humans who have sold their souls to become vampire killers. Each book focuses on one brother primarily and his love story with someone else. They are introducing new characters. I've talked about this in the vlogs in which I read these books. So I read this one for the X's and O's readathon vlog, which I will link for you if you missed it and want to watch it. That was a readathon that was 5 days at the beginning of February that I participated in. What prompt did this fulfill? Oh, it was the romantic suspense book for that vlog. It was also over 500 pages for my sorry prompt this month. And I gave this book, I think, 2.5 stars. I think this was my 2.5 star. And I rounded it up to 3 on Goodreads. I don't dislike these books. I just think they're all doing the same thing, and it's just not worth it for me to read them anymore. Then I read Holding Pattern by Jenny Shih for the same readathon, and this is a mother-daughter relationship. It's about a woman who moves back in with her mom after her relationship falls apart, and her mom is engaged to this Silicon Valley guy. And so it's a lot about her having to reckon with the fact that her mom is different than her mom was when this woman was a child and being mothered by her mom. And also like things in their relationship having to be healed. There's another part of this book that I found very interesting where essentially she has dropped out of graduate school, but she was going for some kind of psychology, and she gets a job as a cuddler or something, where it's a company that thinks that we just don't have enough touch. Like humans crave touch and there's not enough touch in our society. And so she goes to work for this company to be a professional cuddler where people can like go meet with her and they like cuddle. I ended up giving this book 4 stars, I believe. I really enjoyed it. I read this for the prompt purple on the cover for the X's and O's readathon, and I liked it. I did not love it the way that I was expecting to, and it was honestly a lot different than I sort of thought that it would be because, like I mentioned, it is about their mother-daughter relationship, but it's also mostly about the daughter in that relationship and her life. And like she was in this relationship for a really long time, and now the relationship is over, so she's trying to figure out like who she is as a person outside of that relationship. And it was interesting, but it was also very slice of life. The next book that I read, also for the X's and O's readathon, was Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation by Ken Starr. I gave this book 3 stars. I thought it was fine. It actually might be one of the 3.5 stars that I gave. I read this for the prompt, 2 people on the cover, because it does have Bill and Hillary Clinton on the cover. And this is a book written by Ken Starr, who was a special investigator into the Clintons when Bill Clinton was being impeached in the 90s. And it's about things that he discovered about the Clintons. And also it talks a lot about his like personal biases against them. I thought it would be interesting because I mentioned this in the vlog as well. And when I was doing my TBR, the Clinton impeachment is something that I was technically alive for, but I was so young that I don't really remember anything about it. So it's something that I'm like curious about and learning more about. And I didn't love this book, but also I'm glad that I read it because I thought it's a topic that I'm interested in. So I'm glad that I read it. And then the last book that I read for the X's and O's readathon was actually A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer. And this is a first book in a fantasy YA retelling series, and this is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. So we follow this girl whose name I'm not going to remember, but she lives in Washington, D.C. in the human world, and her mother is really sick, and her brother has gotten involved in some like drug dealing, but like some sketchy matters with people, and he owes them a lot of money. And one day she gets kidnapped essentially by this guy who takes her back to this magical world in Emberfell. And the premise, of course, is that this guy works for the Beast, who doesn't actually look like a beast in this story. He just turns into a beast if he can't find someone to fall in love with him, and can't control himself if that happens. And so he's like hurt a lot of people, and he keeps like reliving the same season of his life until he can find someone to fall in love with him. This was a really like good book. I gave this 4 stars. I enjoyed it. I had a good time reading it. I'm planning on continuing in it. But it wasn't like as spectacular as I feel like I was hoping that it would be, but it was a very solid 4-star YA fantasy retelling. I do like Beauty and the Beast retellings, and I liked how self-aware this was. I also liked that our main character spends a lot of the first part of the book actually trying to escape this situation, which I thought was very interesting and realistic as a take on Beauty and the Beast. I will say the romance aspect of this was my least favorite part of it, but I think that was on purpose. So I liked that book, did not love that book, but I would recommend it if it sounds like something that you would be interested in. And then I tried to participate in Jante's Inferno, which was a readathon. I think it was 10 days, and it was, the premise of the readathon is to get out of hell. And so there were circles of hell, and each circle of hell had a different prompt. You can combine prompts that are right next to each other. So you could, the maximum number of books, or the minimum number of books you had to read, I think was 5 books for this readathon. I managed to read 2.5. So these will be a little out of order because I read other things that were not for this readathon because of holds that I had and other video projects that I was planning on doing. So I will briefly touch on those after I finish talking about the readathon. But the first thing I read for that readathon was The Shining by Stephen King. And this fit the horror prompt and the winter setting prompt, which were the first 2 prompts in that readathon. This is Stephen King's like masterpiece. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I thought it was fine, but I don't like Stephen King's writing, unfortunately. So this is a book that's about a family called the Torrances, and Jack Torrance has lost his job, so he moves his family out to Colorado to become the winter caregiver of this hotel in the off season. And essentially they know that once it snows, they will not be able to leave the hotel, so they're all going to be stuck there, and he's going crazy, and his son can see like ghosts. He has the Shining, and yeah, I don't know. It was fine. I feel bad that I didn't like that book as much as I wanted to, because I really like, that's one of those books that I've like put on a pedestal for myself and really thought that I would enjoy. But I've read several Stephen King books now, and the 2 that I've liked the most are The Stand and 11/22/63. And I don't know if those are popular or unpopular opinions, but I don't know. For some reason, this just like wasn't what I wanted it to be. This was on my 24 to read in 2024, so I'm happy about that. But yeah, it was not a super big hit for me, unfortunately. The next thing that I read for that readathon was a novella, or a short story really. It's 91 pages in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series, and it's called Father Mine. It follows a character, Zadist, and his mate from his book is pregnant and gonna have a child. And in this world, This is a vampire romance series. In this world, it is very dangerous to have vampire children for some reason. Like, the women just die in childbirth a lot, so he's like really freaked out about that. And then also it causes him to like revert back to like his former ways before he found his mate and became a good person. And I did not like this one. I gave it 2 stars. I wish I didn't read it, kind of, because I loved Sadist and Bella as a couple before this. So I'm pretty disappointed in that one. But yeah, it just did not work for me. Unfortunately, I really do think that my time with the series has just come to an end. And that was for the vampire prompt. And then I also started a Game of Thrones for this readathon. I have finished this, but I did not finish this in the vlog where I read for the readathon. But this is the first book in an epic fantasy series by George R.R. Martin. There's an HBO show based on it that I'm planning on watching because I want to do like book versus adaptation, season by season, book by book. I think that will be interesting for me. I just have to find the time to actually watch the show and make some notes. But this was good. I gave this, I think, 3.5 stars. I didn't love it the way that I sort of expected to, but this is a lot of setup for the rest of the series. So you're following a ton of characters and you're seeing them like lay down alliances because there becomes this power vacuum in these kingdoms. And at the end, so the rest of the series I think is going to be about who is going to try to fill this power vacuum. Right now, the power vacuum is created in this book, basically. And you're learning who all the main players are, who all the different families are, and like just different secrets about the families. So I'm very interested to keep going in this, but I did not love this book as much as like so many other people love it. But I can like kind of see why people love it, if that makes sense. I'm pretty hesitant. I am reading the second book this month. I'm planning on reading it in March. I'm nervous about reading these books because I know that the series is not finished. Like George R.R. Martin has not written the last, I think there's 2 books left to come out. One of them, I believe he is at least writing or working on or has something written for, but I think it was supposed to come out in like 2013 or 2014. And obviously it's 2024 and it's not out yet. So that makes me a little nervous because I'm nervous to like get really attached and then be one of those people who's stuck wondering what's going to happen. But the show is finished, so I can watch the show and let that sort of, I already know what happens at the end of the show too, which I think is interesting. But yeah, so I did read this. I did give it 3 stars, 3.5 stars, whatever. I understand why people love it. I just don't know that I do. But that doesn't mean that I won't continue in that series because I'm planning on doing that. Then I finished 2 other books in between these. So this is a 30-hour audiobook. So I read a couple things in between. One of the things I read was The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson, which is a sci-fi classic. And that is about, I'm sure everyone knows, but it's basically like told from the perspective of this police detective telling this story of this man who finds out that he can turn into like an alter ego of sorts. This was fine. I didn't love it. I listened to it as an audiobook, and I think if I'd read it physically, I might have liked it more, but I didn't read it physically. I listened to it as an audiobook, and it was fine. It's very short, and I think, again, this is one of those things where like I understand why people like it. I thought the storytelling technique was cool. I just didn't love it. It was fine. I also read My Fat Mad Teenage Diary by Ray Earl, which if you ever watched My Mad Fat Diary on Channel 4 back in the day, like 2013, I think is when that show was on. It was based on this actual diary written by Ray Earl, who was an author of other things, I believe. But she published her diary from 1 year of her life when she was 17 in 2007. And the diary takes place in 1989. And it's just about her getting out of a mental institution and being like overweight and being the only person that she knows who is overweight, and she has binge eating disorder, which is like briefly talked about. I thought this was so interesting. I'm actually planning on doing a book versus adaptation review of this. She has a second diary that I've purchased. It's not at my library, which is another year of her life, but I know the show went on for 3 seasons, 2.5 really, because the 3rd season is 3 episodes, but I'm curious, like, when her second diary was published in 2014, which was when the show was coming out. So I'm curious how much impact it had on how the show was written. But yeah, I'm currently reliving my obsession with my Mad Fat Diary. I don't know where. I saw someone ask on probably Instagram, like if anyone else had a Mad Fat Diary phase. And I saw that and was like, oh my God, I forgot about that show. Because I never watched the show. I saw clips of it and like GIFs on Tumblr in 2014, and was like obsessed with it from that angle. But I didn't have access to Channel 4, but now it's on Hulu if you want to watch it. I've now watched it all the way through twice, and I'm on a third watch. This is what I do when I really like something. I just watch it over and over and over again. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. That's probably why I didn't read as much in February, because I was rewatching that show so many times. Yes, I think I gave that 4 stars as well. It's very funny because Ray Earl is like very funny, but obviously it's very sad because it's about like pretty sad things. I really like it. So I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I'm hopefully gonna do like a full scale video on that. I don't know if anyone would want to watch it, but I'm going to do it for myself. It'll be my own personal pet project. The next book that I finished was Seasonal Fears by Seanan McGuire. I was originally going to read this for a readathon, I think, but I don't remember which one. I read this because it fulfilled the sci-fi prompt for my Sorry board, and I really loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. It's the second book in a series-ish called, or I don't know what the series is called. It's the sequel to Middle Game, and Middle Game follows Roger and Dodger, who are one of them is really good at math and one of them is really good at language, and they're basically alchemically created twins. This is the same concept. There are alchemically created twins in this book, but it's about seasons. So one of them is winter and one of them is summer. And it's actually about these two characters who are like boyfriend and girlfriend. And the winter twin has latched onto this boy who has a lot of the aspects of summer as well. So it's about their relationship, and they have to, I don't know how to explain this, but essentially at the beginning of the book, it's like told to the reader that there's always like seasonal kings and queens. So there's like a winter king or queen and a summer king or queen. And if they die, then there's this new like race to the labyrinth to discover who will be the next. And there are certain people who are more like inclined towards a season, and those people are trying to become the next seasonal head, if that makes sense. It doesn't. I don't know how to explain it, but it was so good. I love this series. It's very weird, obviously. It talks a lot about like alchemically creating things, and the characters are very like vivid and goofy. I just really loved this book. I don't know what else to say about it. Roger and Dodger from Middle Game make an appearance, which is quite fun. And I'm excited to see, I think the next book in the series comes out this summer. And I'm excited to get to it. I put off reading this book. I think I read Middle Game in 2020. I don't know when Seasonal Fears came out, but I remember being like nervous to read it. And now I'm really glad that I did read it because it was great. It might be on my top books of the year again, which Middle Game definitely was. It was either my first or second favorite the year I read it. But yeah, I loved it. And then the last thing that I finished in February, West with Giraffes, which I started back in January. This book, I almost DNF'd because I thought it was kind of boring. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I really liked the ending of this book. But there are certain things about the storytelling that I didn't enjoy. So this book is told from the perspective of an old man who is writing down his life story, but particularly the story of this one summer in the 30s when he volunteered to drive a caravan of giraffes from New York City to California because they were being transplanted to a zoo in California. And his relationship with the old man, who is like in charge of the giraffes, who can't drive for whatever reason. I don't remember it being explained. He also has like a romantic connection with this journalist who is following them. And he's writing this book to someone when he's in a nursing home over 100 years old. And so like, you're not quite sure whether he's all there or not. And he's definitely not all there, but that's what it's about. I did not like the aspect that he was writing to someone as an old man and like reflecting on his life. I don't know if that has ever worked for me, but it certainly did not in this book. I At the end, it made sense why it had to be written that way. And I did, again, like the conclusion, but it's just not my favorite way to hear a story or to have a story told to me. I don't know why that is. It just, in this instance, did not work for me. I'm thinking of another book, True Grit, is similar to that, where the little girl is an adult woman telling the story about being a little girl in this time when she's telling the story of True Grit. I think perhaps because in this book, every like chapter break, he would be interrupted by some of the nursing home staff. And like he would forget someone's name or fall asleep and need to be woken up, or like he needed to eat, he needed to take his medicine. That just really to me, it broke apart the story in a way that didn't work for the story. So I ended up giving this 3 stars, like I mentioned. This is the other cross-country road trip book. Seasonal Fears was the other one. They're like driving across from Portland down to Alabama for that book. But I don't know. I guess I liked parts of this book. I didn't like parts of this book. I thought this book was boring in parts, but I really enjoyed the ending. So I am ultimately glad that I finished it. But this has a really high rating on Goodreads, and I'm not sure who is rating it that highly. Although it could just be a case of like, this just wasn't really the book for me, but I just don't get it, I guess. Those are the 11 books that I finished in February. I guess I should tell you the DNFs. I almost forgot about that. For Jante's Inferno, I tried to read Whiskey in a Teacup by Reese Witherspoon, and I did DNF that about 20% in. The main reason I DNF'd it is because I was expecting, it's supposed to be like Reese Witherspoon's memoir, and it was a lot more about, like, she had just released a homewares brand, so it was a lot about her like personal style and how that has influenced her brand, and she had like snippets of her life, but it just didn't, it felt like it was intending to sell me a couch or like dishware, and that's just not what I wanted to read, so I gave up on it. The other thing that I DNF'd was originally a book that I was supposed to be reading for X's and O's for the Red on the Cover prompt, which is The Art of Gathering, How We Meet and Why It Matters by Priya Parker. I only DNF'd this. It's a nonfiction book about like meetings and how to successfully host gatherings. First of all, it was very pretentious, so I wasn't like super invested in it, and my hold expired. So I had read however many pages I had read, and then it got automatically returned to the library, and I just decided I don't care about finishing it. So I am DNFing that one as well. Those are the 11 books that I read, plus 2 books that I DNF'd in the month of February. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these and how you felt about them. Also, let me know what you read in February, like what your favorite thing you read this past month was. I hope you're having a great day. You can subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos from me, because I do try to post 2 videos every single week that I've been failing at, but I'm trying. And I will see you in another video very soon.